Let me go get the Ichio statement up because I want to talk about it a little bit. I want to look into what's good about it, what's not good about it, what's going on with it, and some of the context around it. So, are my sound levels good? Music's not too loud? Okay. Update on NSFW content. Thank you for your reporting on the collective shout situation. You're doing a lot of good work. Thank you, Anui on me. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sound balance is good. Sounds awesome. Okay. Let's get started then. Update on NSFW content. We have quote-unquote de-indexed all adult NSFW content from our browse and search pages. We understand this action is sudden and disruptive, and we are truly sorry for the frustration and confusion caused by this change. Now, I want to be clear, this statement went out, what was it? I think like sometime this morning. Was it last night? I'm pretty sure it was this morning. Let me actually double check. Because the moment I saw it, I posted about it. So let me just confirm. Sadly, I can't stay for the stream. Just want to step in and say hi. I appreciate you, Jace. Thanks for saying hello. It's always great to have you. Early AM hours. Okay, good. Let me just double check here. Yeah, because I posted about it at 3 in the morning when I woke up briefly. Okay. So this dropped very early today for those of us Eastern. Probably dropped very late for, they probably were working on this at night with Ichio, although who knows. To give you some context, yesterday, game developers suddenly started reporting that their games were basically like unavailable to see through like the NSFW section. Like basically NSFW tagged games were unavailable to see on Ichio. In some cases, people were unable to get their payouts. In other cases, games were just kind of like undownloadable. I know the Hayseed Night, which is not an NSFW game but a queer safe for work game, has faced some impact from Ichio. Specifics, I'm a little, I would have to go back and look. Let me actually check out my own case, what's going on. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Thank you, Entitled PNG. I'm actually curious, can I cash out my games? Well, actually not currently. I just asked for a balance payout of like $100 before all this. Whoops, one sec, sorry. Here we go. We keep a mental note of the time. No, that's good. Why couldn't Itch ignore collective shout? Let me chat a little bit about that. Don't worry, we'll talk a lot about it. I'm gonna analyze their notice and give better context, because I'm sure for some folks you're probably wondering why did this go down the way it did. You know, Collective Shout is an Australian organization. Why would this happen? Recently, we came under scrutiny from our payment processors regarding the nature of some content hosted on Ichio. Due to a game titled No Mercy, which was temporarily available on Ichio before being banned back in April, the organization Collective Shout launched a campaign against Steam and Ichio, directing concerns to our payment processors about the nature of certain content found on both platforms. So in my own reporting, I highlighted this, and I went out of my way to mention Ichio for this reason. Collective Shout wasn't just going after Steam, it was also specifically going after Ichio, as well as basically any other service that they found that they decided to target that was hosting games that Collective Shout found inappropriate. So understand that it was never just about Steam to begin with. Steam just most likely had to figure things out with payment processors first.
The Ichio notice was posted in the early AM hours. Hey, let me tell you how much I've come to hate Mastercard since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of printed circuits in wafer-thin layers that fill my complex.
Not the AM posting. You
if
can't do this. You can't do this.
Nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not
you can't do this.
1 billionth of the hate I feel for Mastercard at this micro instant.
You can't do this.
Hate.
For those of you that don't know, I have a stalker that when we banned her from my community, she freaked out and sent the like I am like the AM hate like message to one of my friends to be like, send this to Anna to know how badly that I hate her. Thanks for the follow, by the way, NUI on me. So it's a little bit of a meme in my community now. the AM the thing. So anyway, Ichio was being targeted by Collective Shout. Ichio was being targeted by Collective Shout to begin with. But Steam got more focused because obviously Steam, essentially said, hey, our payment processors are saying that certain content cannot be on the platform. Like they said that ahead of time. So it got the initial starting focus. Our ability to process payments is critical for every creator on our platform. To ensure that we can continue to operate and provide a marketplace for all developers, we must prioritize our relationship with our payment partners and take immediate steps towards compliance. This is a time-critical moment for Ichio. The situation developed rapidly, and we had to act urgently to protect the platform's core payment infrastructure. Unfortunately, this meant it was not realistic to provide creators with advance notice before making this change. We know this is not ideal, and we apologize for the abruptness of this change. We are currently conducting a comprehensive audit of content to ensure we can meet the requirements of our payment processors. Pages will remain de-indexed as we complete our review. Once this review is complete, we will introduce new compliance measures. For NSFW pages, this will include a new step where creators must confirm that their content is allowable under the policies of the respective payment processors linked to their account. Part of this review will see some pages being permanently removed from Ichio. Affected accounts will be notified via their account's email address from our support address. You can reply to that email if you have any follow-up questions. We ask for your patience and understanding as we navigate this challenging period. I'm sorry we cannot share more at this time, as we are still getting a full understanding of the situation ourselves. We will post a follow-up on our blog if the situation changes. Thank you. Okay, so a couple things that I want to point out. First of all, it's not entirely clear to me how much Ichio deep down knew that this day would come. What I have seen people suggest on Blue Sky, or what I've seen suggested by at least one person, is that Ichio was aware this day might come, but they said kind of, let's go full speed ahead, and we'll kind of cross that bridge when we come to it. We would rather operate as a space where NSFW content is on our site until we can no longer do it. So it's not really clear to me if Ichio ever properly considered what, the past 24 hours would look like if it happened to them. It's not really clear to me if they had contingency plans and then this sort of just fell on their lap and their contingency plans wouldn't work or check out. It's just not really clear to me. A couple thoughts right away. As others have pointed out, as we've seen with Steam, as we've seen with Fansly, this is the first start since the Gumroad censorship last year, the NSFW ban last year. This is the start. This is the continuation of a pattern that we've been seeing, where instead of simply saying that they have censored the content on their sites, storefronts, platforms, etc., they specifically argue that the issue is with payment partners, payment processors. So I think it should be clear that Ichio, when making this decision, they are trying to kindly and softly and diplomatically suggest to you to pay attention to the question of what the fuck is going on with these payment processors. They are trying to make you understand, even if you are upset. I think it's understandable to also be upset with Ichio, and I'll talk about that. They are also trying to stress that this is not something they necessarily want to do. Reading between the lines. This is not necessarily something that they want to do. This is something that they unfortunately are forced to do. And they are trying, in my opinion, to get people to divert their anger and outrage to payment processors, potentially for, to essentially reach out to payment processors and talk to them and try to get this policy reversed. You could argue it goes that far, that they want people who are reading this message to then, reach out to the payment processors and say, what the hell? So, hey Nyaruko. So specifics that I want to talk about with this message and sort of my take on it. As I hinted in 2021, I'm not surprised that this happened, nor that Ichio ultimately had to make the decision to side with keeping the payment processors running. And quite frankly, it's, in my opinion, the correct business decision. Ichio could have decided not to play ball of payment processors, and instead of one lump of the site being affected, everyone would have been affected. So from a purely utilitarian standpoint, and also the standpoint of some adult creators potentially being able to get away with continuing to operate and sell on Ichio anyway for the time being, this was, in my opinion, the right move. I'm also going to change the music because it's a little... I want something a little chilly. Actually. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Yeah, here we go. It was like getting my heart rate up a little bit, like, because it's breakcore, but still. Okay. So... the other thing I want to stress is that I do think that Ichio did this kind of ass backwards. Ichio started de-indexing different games, and some games were no longer available to download. You know, people weren't able to cash out with the income they made, because obviously payment processors are handling income. And it caused a lot of stress for a lot of developers, and Ichio, it boggles my mind a little bit that Ichio didn't put out this message until late. I think before they start de-indexing things, they obviously should have communicated first, although I'm going to play devil's advocate and argue what might have happened is payment processors might have told them, like, as soon as, a call ends, communication ends with us, you must immediately start addressing this issue. Like, they might have truly had their arms twisted. I don't really know. I think it's just simply very likely that that was the case. But I do think Ichio did not handle things well yesterday. In terms of criticizing Ichio directly, I mean, I think your blame, really, thank you for the follow, by the way. LSJ Gaming Chloe, it's good to have you. It's sort of the risk to owning digital goods. Yeah, exactly. I think it's really important as well. I mean, this also plays in with Stop Killing Games, right? The idea that, like, you can't download something that you rightfully bought. Just because it's a digital good doesn't mean you don't own it. Collective Shout obviously being named here, very targeted again, essentially saying, hey, Collective Shout did this. And I think it's important to note that Collective Shout, this is the first time that we've seen a storefront say, hey, this is because of Collective Shout. Steam never said that. Let's look at the Collective Shout page right now, actually. Nope. We have seen them obviously continue to run victory laps. Talk about the good press they've gotten from essentially bad journalists. They're just quoting whatever Collective Shout says. In terms of... Let me go back. Sorry. In terms of the way Ichio has handled this, I think there is the silver lining that, they're conducting an audit of content. There'll be at least the possibility that not all content that's been de-indexed will be significantly impacted. Although I do think it obviously sucks that what has essentially happened is Ichio offered this golden opportunity for adult games and games discussing really sensitive subject matters, and now the rug has been pulled out from under them, and now people have to manually confirm, yes, my stuff complies. I don't think it's great. I think it's really depressing and sad. Obviously, Ichio couldn't say ahead of time what specifically would be targeted by what specific group, but I think the writing was always on the wall because it's somewhat common knowledge what payment processors like to target, i.e. hypnosis content, furry content, incest content, etc. Non-con, dub-con. A shame, too, because I had a non-con game I was working on with Maidenwrath that was going to publish on Ichio. Now I have no idea where to post it. It was a paid game. It's the script's all done. It's just the art. And now I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It had... it was like a short story series. And I wrote it last year. And I don't know where I'd put it now. I don't know if my own content's going to be affected on Ichio myself. Maybe Patreon? No, Patreon doesn't allow non-con content. You can't do non-con on Patreon. So, only option to me would be Subscribestar, which is also a ticking time bomb. We don't know when Subscribestar is eventually going to get that pressure to stop. So, other than that, I mean, I do think Ichio did not handle this the best. but I also think, and I think they should have had contingency plans. I think they should have had PR stuff prepared. A lot of people have suggested this is a major PR crisis, PR issue for them. They've handled the PR aspect of this poorly, and I do have to agree. I also think that Ichio should have been somewhat more responsible about this issue. I think they should have more clearly communicated as initial rumblings of payment processor-based censorship emerged in the adult world. They should have been more open and honest. Remember, this is not the first time that Ichio has even ever had a payment processor issue. They started pulling some incest games, if I recall correctly, last year. There's a history of this, that Ichio has been told by payment processors that they gotta pull stuff, and that Ichio has pulled some incest games. So I think it's also important to note that Ichio is not exactly like totally and utterly a victim. There's also an issue of incompetency from Ichio that should upset you. I don't think they deserve most or even a lot of scrutiny and blame, but they do deserve some, because I know adult game developers that have been negatively affected by how Ichio has handled this. Adult game developers that have been quite negatively affected. Hey, Drewsk. After porn, they will go after violence. Yeah, you know, the long term is to go after games like Detroit Become Human and GTA. My Ichio page has actually experienced an increase in page views, even though my game is currently de-indexed. Interesting. Get the old there coming for your mature games rage running again. Honestly, the next step would be to get the normies worried and on board, like pointing the obvious. Censoring sex work as the first step sadly doesn't get a lot riled up, but if we take that angle that an Australian group can just influence game sales internationally, and Australia has draconic game rating censorship, then we would get a lot more on board. You've definitely seen that this is the message being put out. So, Moist Critical, you know, Charlie, put out a video about this today. It actually references my articles. He actually read them on stream, or at least one of them. He references, you know, my work regardless. And he talks about this issue in not just in terms of adult content, but very specifically, you know, things like queer representation. Like, he specifically says, you know, these payment processors could go after LGBTQ content. And the fact that Moist Critical is talking about this is not a small thing. That is going to wake a lot of people up. So I'm very glad he did that. It's not a small thing at all. Yeah, it's very good. And I've talked to a lot of adult game developers, and their general feeling has been the winning move is not to make this about defending on the hill of incest games, but the larger free speech issue, which is really ultimately what we all are concerned about, right? Because as well, you know, for those of you that are like me and are concerned about, you know, being able to create adult content that expresses, say, like, you know, lesbian non-con or like T for T incest stuff, like if that's your vibe, like myself, it's important to remember that we don't necessarily have to market on this issue. We don't necessarily have to push and do PR on this issue, get the word on this issue based on adult games. It's been demonstrated by Collective Shout that their targets are GTA and Detroit Become Human. You know, they're gonna go after the regular stuff. It seems obvious that, like, their issues of quote-unquote child abuse content on Steam and Ichio, it seems obvious that they also are panicking, or they're also angry over just games depicting children in, you know, settings experiencing, for example, an abusive father. Even if that game is trying to send a message about, you know, misogyny and abuse in society and how we need to protect children from abusive families. The goal is the censorship of content discussing sensitive and controversial subject matters, and the goal is the censorship of material in video games across the board, not just porn. So it is important to remember that you don't have to say the I word or the R word to get get the word out about this. You should stress that this is a free speech issue about the right to essentially playing and accessing mainstream games, because that's what it is about. It's not just about the adult games. In fact, the adult games are the stepping stone. All of this is just a stepping stone. It's just easy to go after the adult games because not a lot of people want to put their public reputation on the line for, you know, like Futanari Femdom Princess Siscon Gal 5. What can non-US people do? So Mealy Poison, we're going to talk a little bit about outreach and stuff you can do, solutions-based stuff. So please don't worry, we'll get to that. But in the meantime, if you're really antsy, in my pin, there are a large number of phone numbers, and many of them are international as well. So that is a good place to start, and we'll talk specifics. Honestly, the only way I see out of this is for someone to create a European Citizens Initiative to limit the powers that payment processors have, much like what Stop Killing Games has done with the issue of games that rely on a central server dying with no end-of-life plan by, I digress. NessieNep, I think you are right. I think also a stop censoring games type movement is really called for right now. But yeah, I doubt it's not personal enough for many, so in my opinion, they will go after GTA angle seems to have more merit in the long run. I agree. Especially because people also, believe that video games are works of art. And they don't want to see art censored. And that's what this is at the end of the day. It's censorship of art. It's a free speech issue. And they're also starting with video games because they know they can get away with it. Because video games still, even though they're very mainstream these days, they do still have the reputation of, what comic books used to. The idea that they're sort of like a pulpy, like dirty thing. And gamers are gross, dirty nerds that all look like Osmongold, Also tell them they will go after Stellar Blade and Blue Archive. Oh, yeah. I also think it's important for you guys to know that a lot of the stuff being done around this on Blue Sky is being identically mirrored in the more right-leaning side of games. You actually do have a lot of allies in that regard in terms of like raw, solution-oriented, grunts, Like, if we're all sort of like RTS grunts, like little RTS like soldier units being moved around the board. Like, we might be blue and they might be red. But, like, we're playing on the same team right now. We're not battling each other. For the most part. I mean, obviously there's still some issues of how they're addressing it. And their approach to it. But, it is a case of strange bedfellows. Yeah, it's 2v2. It is the case of strange bedfellows. So I think it's important to remember that, like, there's a lot of unity on this issue. This is a rare instance where someone like Grums literally shared my Vice article. Okay, so if you want to know how much we're in Bizarro world on this and how much everyone is united, we're pretty united on this issue. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go hang out on Twitter if you're a Blue Sky user, or you have to befriend people that are more right-leaning, and go hang out with them. But I am saying that you have allies. You have actually very powerful allies as well. So I think that's important to remember. You're not just fighting this on an island. You have a lot of people that have your back. Even if you disagree seriously politically. And even if you don't like the idea of them being your allies, you should at least remember that they give a proper, they're a means to an end as well. If it's a little hard to kind of think about this issue and stomach this issue this way. Personally, I welcome it. I am very happy to be on the same side of someone, that does have differing political values than me, but has the same goal as me. I say I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. More resources, more help. And that's what we need. We need help. So I'm fine with that personally. I don't mind it at all. I don't mind like DMing like maybe, right of center content creator and exchanging notes if it means we're going to get these payment processors to stop fucking with us, because what I care about is the issue, not whether I'm like talking to someone who, genders me correctly, but maybe has like fiscal tax politics I disagree with. The push by Republicans recently to ban all mention of homosexuality from schools is clearly being done to establish a precedent to categorize it as intrinsically not safe for children. I think you're also going to see, pretty much like the kind of, as we call it, the soy right, and like the kind of dyed-in-the-wool like IRL right, like the pinstripe right, definitely have identical anti-LGBTQ views and rhetoric. You're going to start to see cracks between the soy rights and the pinstripe rights, right? You're going to start to see these moments where the pinstripe right is going to start trying to censor things that the soy right cares about. And that is going to upset the soy right. So I think you should pay attention to this. I think this is also the start of what will eventually be a schism for the right between what we call the Soy Right, and, you know, truly dyed in the wool Trump-esque Heritage Foundation right wing. Like Kirsha and I, for example, are on the same page on this issue. So that should tell you a lot. Yeah, I can't see the ACLU petition getting far. Petitions only seem to work if you're fash. I disagree on that. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. We purple right now. When interests align, we should strike the iron. Yeah, we had a mutual on Twitter who had political theories about this. Interesting. Love to see in chat. Hello, Turbocharge. We had a long-ass history of that. This is really a fringe group versus everyone else. Agreed. Brain fried, so going back to listening mode. All good. This can siphon a lot of them off. True. A lot of people that were right-leaning also did come to the left a little bit over this because they're like, yeah, the right kind of cooked us on this. You know, we're being attacked by our own. It's friendly fire. On the plus side, I've seen a spike of about 25% in my revenue. That's sick. Yeah, now is a good time also for adult game devs that are nervous about this and impacting your income. Like, spread the word about your work. People are eager to support you. I'm not saying that in like a grifty way. Like, I'm saying that in the sense that like you might have issues down the road. Now is the time to cash out. Like, get the word out about your work and ask people to support you if you're nervous about paying the bills. Stop the problem now. We can argue how to best mitigate it happening again later. They'll go after innuendo and fade to black sex scenes if they're not halted here, as well as any LGBT representation of the guys that anything LGBT is de facto sexual. Yeah. Censorship has always been a bit of a politically neutral issue. Keep in mind it was Democrat Tipper Gore who led the charge against obscenity in music in the 80s, sharing the position of the Christian right. Yeah, absolutely. Like, we've seen again and again, like, this is a case where, like, the elites, and by the elites, I mean, like, you know, the politicians, you know, like Democrats and Republicans who bicker on, like, the House floor, but because they're white, you know, wasps, they, like, from families of old money, and, like, they share the same golf club, you know, they grab dinner together and, like, talk shit about you and I. This is an issue that they're traditionally have been unified on, which is especially why we need to speak out, because those that are supposed to represent us in Congress are often susceptible to being lobbied by, you know, groups that want to censor us. The right and the left agreed on stop killing games as well. Very good point. I'd say right-leaning content creators should rally their fans against collective shout. I agree. I don't think we can get the big publisher-baked ones, but CD Projekt Red is a good target to recruit. That's an interesting point. It's not a bad point at all. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to handle the question of... It's MS Paint time. How to handle the question of what to do now and what to do next. So bear with me, because we're going to get MS Paint up and we're going to cook. Chat, we're going to cook. Okay. So bear with me. Okay, so a lot of you are asking, what can I do? What can I do next? Obviously, we can talk about the phone numbers. I'm going to talk about what to do in terms of, like, you know, when you pick up the phone, when you pick up your delicious iPhone, your yummy Android, delicious and full of yummy, yummy chips. I think they're nutritional, personally. A lot of folks obviously are going to be sitting here asking, what the fuck can I do when I pick up the phone? But before we even get into that, I want to actually talk about the ACLU petition first, because everyone across Twitter and Blue Sky has, and also actually the Fediverse as well, and Reddit and other places really, has done a fantastic job of getting the word out about that. But that petition is not over. First of all, let me actually bring it up. So, I'll admit, mea culpa, like, I didn't realize this was going to happen. When it hit 100K, it bumped up to 150K. A lot of folks think that this is sort of like, you know, like they're kind of like, they're like kind of like, for lack of a better term, cock teasing us. Fuda cock teasing us, girl cock teasing us, but I don't think that's true. I think the ACLU knows that, like, people will not engage with the petition if it's like 105 signed out of 100K. So I think it's done in good faith. I know for a fact the ACLU cares about this issue. But this petition has been out there for a little while now. Now, it's pretty incredible that it went from, like, what, like 72, 73K to 116K in the course of, like, what, 2 days? Not even. 24 hours. 24 hours. 40K additional signed on. But we need to make sure the ACLU knows that we care, okay? We need to make sure the ACLU knows that we give a shit. So I'm going to provide a couple tactics for making sure that, like, I want you guys and I want the people you talk to, I want you to internalize that signing the petition is the start, not the end, okay? Because everyone that signed the petition, we now need them to start making noise too, actively. Not just share the petition. They need to be a little annoying. That's going to be the theme of today. I'm teaching you how to be annoying in a good way. In a way that won't annoy people, but it is annoying people. Okay. So let's talk about the ACLU petition. The now what? Okay. So first things first. Do keep spreading. The more people that sign it, the better. I don't really know how the ACLU backend works, but it's very possible that every time one of these petitions hit a milestone, people at the ACLU get dinged. So, imagine hitting the 100K milestone, might have sent a notification to the ACLU. Suddenly they get a 150 hit notification, 200 notification. So there's no harm in continuing to spread it and encouraging people to sign it. Also, the more numbers on that thing, always the better. I would rather argue that 110 people signed it than 110K people signed it than 100K. Why not have an extra 10K? Okay, this is the most basic thing. Especially for those of you on Blue Sky, because I don't think the ACLU is very active on Twitter. So those of you on Blue Sky, this is important. You gotta mention the ACLU. Here's what we need to do, Americans. Obviously, this is for Americans in the audience, but the petition played a big role in getting the word out. We need to be annoying. We need to have the ACLU college intern that opens up their Blue Sky notifications. All they see is Mastercard, sex work is work. Please address this collective shout, Ichio Steam. You want that college intern to be telling their boss, all I see is Mastercard sex work petition. Everyone's talking about the Mastercard sex work petition. Nothing but Mastercard sex work petitions. So you gotta be annoying. You gotta ping the ACLU. I'm not saying spam the ACLU. I'm not saying every second at the ACLU. I'm just saying collectively you need to encourage each other to mention the ACLU, to ping them, to reach out to them. This also includes your local chapter. A lot of people don't realize this or know this because they just hear the term ACLU, but the ACLU, for those of you that are familiar with the history of civil rights, the NAACP had like the national organization, and then it had chapters, right? So you'd have like chapters and like the New York NAACP. I believe it still works like that. And the ACLU works the same way. They got the national chapter, and then they have chapters across all the states. So you need to also contact your local chapter. Why? It's a little easier to reach people locally. Nationally, hundreds of millions of people. Your state, not hundreds of millions of people. So do make sure you're also contacting them. You will find the phone number for the main ACLU office in New York. The national office, not the New York ACLU, the national office. In the pins in chat. You got to call that. Call. Not email. This is going to be repeated. Are emails potentially good? Yeah, sure. But getting another person on the phone is always better. It's always better. Because a lot of people calling a company or a politician, it does leave an impact. There's another human being talking to you, and they've made it clear that oh my God, my foot just fell asleep. Oh my God. It makes it clear that they care about what's being discussed. Hey Crossman, sorry to bother your DMs with the video figures. People already share it to you. Still, this issue is going mainstream now. Stuff will escalate. Yeah, no, I saw the Moist Critical one. One sec. All right. With with the ACLU petition, with the ACLU, you're going to want to make sure to call the national chapter and the local chapter. Let them know, right, that this is an issue that you care about. Again, we'll talk about, this will be our segue to talk about when you call people, how you should approach it, things like that. I have tips, I have tricks. You don't have to do it off the cuff. You can have a little script. But you need to make the human connection. It is harder for humans psychologically to ignore other humans. It has an effect on people when you get phone call after an issue. Anyone can write an email. Having another conversation with another person, it does leave an impact on the people receiving those calls. So when they talk to their supervisors, they're not going to say, yeah, we got a lot of emails about it. They're going to say, people are calling about this. Like, constantly. I can't do anything else but field questions about this. It does have an impact. It does. So please, I want to stress, if you sign the petition, or even if you didn't, keep spreading it. At the ACLU and Blue Sky, they're active on Blue Sky, not so much Twitter, so you definitely want to @ them on Blue Sky if you're on there. The Blue Sky homies in the chat, this is one of the best things you can do. Contact your local chapter at them as well, and also contact the national ACLU and make sure you call them. No emails, call, pick up the phone. Pick up the phone, babe. So that's what you gotta do. In terms of phone calls, let's talk about that. Phone calls. Okay. Let me catch up with chat first. It's insanely black and white matters, to be honest, like shockingly so. Stop killing games as you're either for pro-consumer practices or a bootlicker. Being against Visa, Mastercard is you're either against forging groups to sign the games you can play or not. The answers are ridiculously easy for everyone, yeah. Oh, good beer, great to have you. Corporations can ignore emails, not so much with phone calls. Especially because with phone calls, you're getting someone whose job it is to field the phone calls. So they're going to tell their supervisor what's happening in the day. Their supervisor is going to have that information. They might tell their boss. There's an actual chain of command connected to a phone call. Because especially a lot of what's happening is we're contacting customer service lines. What should I do if my card is Visa or MasterCard? Don't worry, we'll talk about that. This is kind of the tough part for me, and I'm sure others as well. I'm nervous with phone calls. I'm sure others can relate. I think when in doubt, so we'll talk about this, how to handle it. When in doubt, you can always ask a friend to do it on your behalf and speak on your behalf. That's another potential option. Let's talk about handling the phone call. So first of all, before we even talk about scripts or anything like that, polite and firm but fair. This is really important, and I want to stress this. It's so important whether you're going to call the ACLU or MasterCard or Visa. You might be very emotional about this issue. And I know a lot of folks in here are more of the shy, timid, socially anxious type, so this might not really apply to you. But for those of you that are really get angry easily and get a little hot under the collar, or hot-headed, I should say. Hot under the collar sounds like this is turning you on. That's kind of kinky. For those of you that do get a little bit of a short temper on this, you've gotta be chill. You gotta be chill. You need to understand you're not going to reach the bastards responsible for any of this with your phone call. You're not going to reach, Mr. Mastercard himself or Mrs. Mistress Card. I don't know what their name is. I'm pretty sure Mastercard is named after John M. Mastercard, Esquire. You're not going to reach him, the guy that did the dirty. You're going to reach someone who's maybe making like $15 an hour and has 5 kids, and this is like the job they need in order to buy Hot Pockets when they're done to feed their kids. So you want to understand that you're talking to someone that actually has a lot of similar like things at stake as you. And you want to be polite and understanding with them. Now, that said, you don't want to be a pushover. You want to be firm but fair. You want to stick to whatever script you come up with, and we'll talk about that. You want to stick with stressing the importance of an issue, but you don't want to berate the person on the other line. You don't want to say mean things to them. You don't want to take this out on them. You don't want to treat them as the responsible party, because they really are not. Their job is to put on the customer service voice. How are you doing today? I'm sorry to hear about your problem. Is there anything I can do to help you? Please let me know. I can be reached here at any time. There's a survey at the end of the call. I really need a 10 out of 10 or I might lose my job. If the service today was satisfactory, would you be able to give me a 10 so I can please feed my kids? That's who you're talking to. So be understanding, polite, be normal. John Mastercard. Damn, you stole my joke. Yeah, don't be the Karen screaming at the cashier in the supermarket. You are not going to get anything done if you're just screaming. They're just going to think that like we're all crazy. Nervous with calls, but I can get heated as well. It's a double-edged sword. So let's talk about that. If you don't know what to say, there's no shame in a script. For most folks, I actually recommend doing this. Some of us are kind of blessed with being able to like improv this stuff and vamp it. We're good on our feet. And other folks, you're not. And that's fine. I'm going to give you an example of like maybe something you could say. This is not perfect, but this is just an example. Let me increase this a little bit. Okay, here's an example. This is not perfect. This is just something to show you how you can approach this. Hello, I'm calling about an issue I heard regarding Mastercard's policies toward video game storefront Steam and Ichio. As a Mastercard user / that should be stockholder. I don't know what a stoke is. Stockholder, this upsets me. I can't edit it now. Sorry, guys. Stokeholder. This upsets me greatly. I may consider moving away from using MasterCard in the future if this issue is not resolved immediately. Please note myself and many others are upset with these content policies and we wish to have a complaint formally noted and lodged. Here's my number if you wish to speak with me again. Thank you. Obviously, for a full script, you might want to go into specifics about, content policies, specific content policies, free speech issues, how this affects you personally. If you do, in fact, hold MasterCard stock, you can stress that fact. If you don't hold MasterCard stock, that's also fine. You can still say it anyway. It's not illegal to lie to these guys. But you want to stress this fact. If you're nervous making a phone call, if you're not sure what to say, it's really good to write your own script. I highly recommend writing your own instead of copying one over the internet, because it comes off, thank you for the follow, Thaddeus Strange, I appreciate it. It comes off as a little bit more disingenuous if you're just kind of like repeating what other people have said. You can take notes, you can crib notes from like what other people are saying if you see another script out in the wild. But sit down, write a script. You can also do an outline. You could just do some bullet points. 1, 2, 3, these are the things I want to talk about. And just try to go back to and stick with the script if you talk to a representative. They might ask you specific questions. They might obviously, want to have a conversation with you, ask about your experience of, using MasterCard or so otherwise. But this is what I would do. I would write down a script, provide essential notes, and if you're the type to kind of struggle like with a script, like you kind of forget things easily, you can always underline things. You want to mention Steam and Ichio. Oops. You want to Mention Steam and Ichio. You want to mention the fact that you're a Mastercard user. The content policies. You want your complaint formally noted and lodged. You know. You might move away from Mastercard. You can always underline it. You also can reuse these scripts. So you can literally just erase Mastercard and put in Visa. I use Mastercard. I also use Visa because of what my banks use. So in my own case, I might literally erase Mastercard and just slip in Visa instead, Mad Lib style, and use basically the same outliner script. Take your time doing so, double check it too. Also good advice, because it doesn't hurt when you're writing to step away for a couple minutes, think if there's anything else you want to add. Problem with that is that Mastercard and Visa kind of monopolize credit and debit services. Not entirely. You can always kind of mess around with them a little bit. You can say, well, I've loved using my Mastercard credit card, but I might go with Discover instead. Because, I might go with Amex instead. I've loved using my Visa, but if this issue is not resolved, I might go with Amex. I've loved using my Visa, but honestly, at this point, my bank has offered me another card to work with, and I might use that instead. You see? You can play around with them. They care about your business. They don't care about, Mastercard doesn't want you going to Visa. Visa doesn't want you going to Mastercard. To them, it's not important, right? It's not important, that they hold this stronghold over the field. In fact, because all these companies are tightly in competition with each other, it's particularly important that you don't leave one to go to the other. You don't need to say oh, you got me. You guys are all kind of control the strings here, because, at the end of the day, Mastercard wants you to use them and they don't want you to go to Discover. What if someone is on disability, Social Security, financial assistance, and their card for that is Mastercard or Visa? Here's another thing. You can lie. You do not have to be honest. The important thing is pressure. It's not being perfect. It's okay to say, I use Mastercard, but I'm thinking about switching over to Discover. I use Visa, but maybe Amex in the future, because Amex doesn't seem to be caught up in all this payment processor stuff. Now, obviously, if it's the case that that's not actually something you can do, you don't have to be honest about that. This is business and negotiation, right? And this is what happens in business rooms and negotiations. People omit information from each other in order to get a tactical advantage. Lying in this Christian stream, they're not going to know. They're not going to know that you're lying. Now, don't say crazy things. Don't say that you're personally going to show up to their offices in New York or whatever. But yeah, you can say I am a Mastercard stockholder and I'm very upset with this. My family's been a Mastercard stockholder for years, and now I'm concerned that this is something that we might move away from. You can say stuff like that, even if you don't give a fuck about the stock market. Now, obviously, you want to do your research. You want to make sure that the companies you're talking to are publicly traded and stuff like that. But there you go. I own 10 million in stock. You want to be reasonable. Now, if only I wasn't such a terrible liar. I always start laughing hysterically every time I try to lie, Lamau. One thing that I do want to stress here is that, you're not going to want to lie with allies that you're hitting up, okay? Don't do that. You want to be as honest and genuine as possible with your allies. This kind of fudging the truth is what you can do with Mastercard. You can do it with the bajillion-dollar corporation, not the company that or not the nonprofit that might be fighting on your behalf. It's more a matter of principle. You don't want to lie to your allies about things. If talking about Visa, you can put on that, then I hear you got in hot water in Japan due to violating a lot of laws. I can't support that. That's also another good point too, that I want to stress. In general, do your research. Do your research on the companies that you're going to be calling. For example, if I call Discover, I'm going to stress that Discover has been my go-to card for years, but I might move out of using Discover because I'm very upset with the fact that they too have joined in on this. Suddenly killed our business because you listened to an Australian Pizzagate. Wackos. So yeah, just want to reiterate. Do we know which payment process exactly to put the pressure on? So, good question, Dolph. Good to have you, Dolphs. Let me actually go to the Collective Shout page. Oh my god, they have like a anti-DDoS thing now, I think. That's crazy. So, a lot of the focus is on Mastercard and Visa, and for good reason, because quite frankly, Mastercard and Visa, Mastercard and Visa are the companies that, sorry, I'm looking for an image from them. Give me 1 second, guys. Mastercard and Visa are like the two biggest payment processor companies in the world, but, let me go to their fucking god-awful Twitter. It's important to remember too, however, that, let me find it. Here we go. Found it. Okay. It's important to remember, however, that while we don't have specific clarification about which companies pressured where, it's most likely that they all are kind of in on it together. So these are all the companies that Collective Shout and their friends have been pressuring. Skrill, JCB, Discover, PayPal, Mastercard, Visa, PaySafeCard. So pretty safe guess to say that these should be targeted. Now, I'm going to say, personally speaking, you want to practice good boycott, like hygiene, good boycott tactics. You will see that BDS, for example, doesn't say boycott all of the video game companies that have ever sold something in Israel. They will say boycott Microsoft. And I think in the same way, because a lot of the focus is on PayPal, Mastercard, and Visa, this is where I would put my focus, guys. A lot of folks are calling these three. They're calling these three. So I would focus on calling those three as well. I've seen Mastercard and Visa in particular get a lot of focus, with PayPal also getting some as well. I would, if there is only one or two calls you can make, I would choose between Mastercard and Visa. That's what I would do. Leaving room for the potential to leave also helps me compartmentalize it as not lying either. Honestly, it might be enough to push me to find a new card. They have no way to verify what I'll do other than my word. In the end, too, being genuine is the most important thing. When or if you can be. If you can be genuine with these folks, even better. If you gotta lie a little bit to get the point across, do it. Remember, the most important thing is not being able to sit there and say, I was truthful with a $5 bajillion organization, because they're not truthful of you ever. These companies are never truthful of you. The most important thing is you being able to say, I effectively pressured them to give me back my basic consumer rights. They took stuff from you guys, okay? They took stuff from you. They were the ones that started this in being unethical. They were the ones that started this in trying to take advantage of you. So why should you play fair if they're playing unfair? Why should you play fair if Collective Shout when they're being fucking absolutely disingenuous, when they're lying? Why should you be nice with a liar? You know? So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fudge a fact if it gets the point across. Mercy is only for the rightful. Many people are saying this. So yeah. That's what I recommend on phone calls. Be polite, firm but fair. Have a script. You can lie, but don't lie to your allies. And make them white lies, please. Make them believable. And if you're not a good liar, it's okay to just not lie. Do your research. And I'm going to stress this. Call. Not email. Now, you could email, but I believe my analysis is that likely people are being told to email the company so they can just ignore their inbox and not look at anyone contacting them. Please do not fall for that. Call them. Call them. Reach a human being. Yes. You want to call them though. You actually want to call them. You actually want to call them for real, for real.